Welcome to the Winding Road Careers Podcast. I'm your host, Travis, and today I have Lindsay LaShell joining me. Lindsay's a marketing activist helping purpose-driven people and organizations do better marketing so that they can do more of the real work. She's also the founder and marketing activist at Open Lines Marketing. Welcome to the show, Lindsay.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
So I think our paths have crossed several times. We're both Akimbo alumni, which I tend to
Yep.
have a lot of Akimbo alumni on my show, or it's pretty much my tribe, my world now. So always nice to connect with other Akimbo people. So
Right. Fellow Raven.
yeah, and you were Alt MBA in
Yep.
2020, right?
That's right.
I think I think I was right before in a cohort right before you. I think I was 36 or 37. I think you were 40, I believe.
42.
And so 42. Okay. So,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah. It was a great time to do that exercise. It was, all that homework and stuff. It wasn't competing with a social life of any kind in the summer of 2020. So it worked out very well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I did mine right before the world um, went to hell in January of 2020 and
Yeah.
had no idea what was on the horizon. And
Yeah.
so it was good. But that set up a lot of other things and kind of taught me that I can do a lot more than I thought I could the
Yeah.
time that I have. Right. So I wrote a
Awesome.
book that year, part of it, Kimbo, as well. So yeah, we've chatted before in the past, and your career paths are impressive and interesting, and wanted to have you on the Winding Road Careers podcast and talk about like all of the different paths you've been down. And so tell us a little bit about kind of a brief overview of kind of where you started and kind of how you got to where you are now.
Yeah. So I'll preface it with this, like, every move I made, like, I had no plan. I had no plan. I had no idea what I was doing. Every move I made just felt like the next right thing at the time until honestly, until the pandemic, and then it was like everything came together. So I graduated from college, I went to Cal, go Bears, graduated from school in the late '90s, which meant that it was like the first dot-com bubble, right? I was already in the Bay Area, the first dot-com bubble was like rolling up, so I started working in startups, then, and it was fascinating. I mean, I had an anthropology degree, didn't really have a plan for using that. And so I just took the jobs that were available to me. And after a couple years of that, I just got really disillusioned. It was like a bunch of rich white dudes moving around other rich white dudes' money, and nobody, like, I like just redistribution of wealth, but that's not exactly how it was going. And so it was just, I got sort of idealistic, and I decided I want to go back to school and get my teaching credential. So I ended up teaching 4th and 5th grade for 5 years. And then I burned out exactly like on schedule, right? That's like the average lifespan of a young teacher. And can editorialize plenty about why I think that is. Um, but when I left teaching, it was because a serial entrepreneur that I had worked with during the first dot-com bubble came to me and said, "I'll teach you everything you need to know. You can work remotely." This was like in the mid 2000s, right? So it was like a huge deal, like, work remotely, work from any internet connection in the world, and I'll double your salary. And it was like, okay, so
Wow.
for somebody with student debt and who was exhausted of teaching, it was a perfect transition. So I did that. That was a fascinating gig for like 3.5 years until the market crashed. And then we lost all of our advertising revenue. So I lost my gig. And that was when I learned what a marketing agency was. Like, I had no idea these things even existed. I didn't know what the like, whatever. It was a mystery to me until somebody in my network was like, "You would be perfect for an agency. You have all these skills," right? So I worked for a couple of marketing agencies over the next few years. And then in 2015, I quit my job and started my own agency. And so that's what I was building when the pandemic started. And I'm super proud of that. I mean, when my friends wanna make fun of me, they say, "Shut up, I'm Lindsay, I'm a job creator." Like, that was like, like, I was never prouder of anything I had done, and it was great, but the pandemic sort of changed that situation for me, and it turned out it wasn't the job that I wanted, so I pivoted in the summer of 2020 away from the content marketing agency that I had started and just began consulting with clients, helping them plan their own marketing strategies that then they could execute on their own, or it would help them figure out how to hire or what kind, size, or shape of marketing agency they needed to work with to get it done. But that was my favorite part of the work, was digging in and making the plan and getting everybody excited about listening to your audience in a new way and getting really practical and creative with just your marketing strategy. Yeah, so that's what I've been doing since then, and fucking awesome. It's my dream job.
That's awesome. And, yeah, so much to dig into there. And I think it's interesting how it sounds like the dot-com bubble was kind of a forcing function in a way for you to
Mhm,
make a move. Um, that kind of a forcing function for me as well. But then also 2008 became a forcing function. Did
mhm.
that time period change anything? The last kind of hard recession, did it affect any of your pivots?
Um, that's interesting. I mean, the funny thing is it affected so the serial entrepreneur that I had worked for, was a content farmer. Not super proud of that in retrospect, right? Like, I actually when I left that job, I didn't have SEO. SEO is, like, my core skill set, and I didn't have it on my resume because I didn't
Mm,
wanna be hired to do more of it.
mm,
Um, and so I got to this marketing agency and they were like, "And you do SEO?" And it was like this big thing, but it was, the market crash coincided with like some really big updates from Google that put an end
mhm,
to a lot of that content farming opportunity. Um, so I don't know. It didn't hit me in my career, I don't think, in that way. Like
mm,
like I said, I landed in a marketing agency that was like they had no SEO, and so any, just one person coming on board with some expertise was a useful thing for their clients. But the first agency I worked in was one of these really small shops that was really specialized, and so we had really big clients. So it was a bilingual marketing agency. We specifically worked with Spanish language preferring people in the United States.
mm.
So we had these huge clients and we ran their Spanish language programs. We worked with like Dove and Swap, like all these Unilever
Wow.
brands, right? We worked with I mean I actually did so we worked with the federal government, so USA.gov, Gobierno USA, and then USA.gov. We got the English language work because we did the Spanish language work so well. So like that was like a big, at the time, I hated it. I used to complain about it like crazy, but I, like, ran the Facebook and the Twitter for USA.gov, right? I did the
Oh, wow.
strategy, I created all the content, like, moderated everything, and I hated it, and my boss was just like, "Shut up. Like, you don't even know what this is on your resume. Just shut up and do the thing, and you'll be fine?" So yeah, so no, I didn't feel that hit outside of just the cultural, what was
Mhm,
going on around. But honestly, it was funny because I didn't feel the hit the first dot-com bubble either because by the
mm,
time it popped, I was out. I was in education,
mm.
And so
Interesting.
so both times I kinda dodged the hit.
Yeah, interesting. Um, and so, fascinating that you had SEO as kind of your core skill set at that time, but you didn't wanna do it anymore. Did you do some of it when you went to that agency, or were you able to say, "Hey, like, y this is what I've done, I don't wanna do it, I wanna do something else?"
My objection to SEO is not the work at the time. It was not the work itself, it was that good SEO at that time was bad for the user.
Mm.
right? Google was still very, very much figuring their shit out. And so it
Mhm.
was like, you remember the days of like the Google bomb where you could literally
Yeah.
have a critical mass of people could point their link text to a certain place and
Mm.
uh, absolutely mess with the rankings.
Yeah.
And so, but as a content farmer, if you're good at being a content farmer, the user experience is pretty lousy because you're
Mhm.
doing a search, you keep looking for answers and you keep sort of not getting satisfying ones. So you click on an ad on the next landing page and you read an article and click on an ad on the next one and you like keep going. So I didn't want to be a part of that anymore.
Yeah.
Once I got into the agency, then was like, these are our clients and we need them to rank for the words that people are going to use to look for them. So, okay, now that's not a bad user experience. So that was fine. So, and
Gotcha.
honestly, like my agency, I did it for a long, long time where even like when we started, when I started Diamond and Branch, like SEO was one of our core competencies and we were a content marketing agency. Like that was really like sort of the essential of what we did. And it was, lots of my clients at that time, the conversation starts with like, oh, I need SEO. And
Mm.
then we would start the conversation with like, well, the SEO doesn't happen in a vacuum, you're gonna need some content, you're gonna need some social, you're gonna need these other things. And that was how I built my business.
Interesting. And so, yeah, speaking of building your business and starting a company, so, we might jump around a bit because I've got
Yeah, yeah.
all kinds of questions about different
Yeah, yeah.
different, times, but starting Diamond and Branch, like, when you started out, was it just you, or did you have a partner or a couple other people come along?
It was just me. I had So from the beginning, so the name of the agency was Diamond and Branch Marketing Group. From the beginning, I was always gonna build a team. Like it was
Mm.
I didn't want to be an entrepreneur. I did not. I was a very reluctant entrepreneur, but I was in a job that was really super toxic and I couldn't find anything else. And so I finally was just like, fuck it. I'm gonna go do this on my own.
Mm.
And so I had one of my oldest friends, a good friend of mine from junior high and high school, was like, "I heard you were starting a business. I would like to help." And I'm like, "That's awesome." She had already run another business, and so she sort of like just raised her hand to like manage my ops and stuff. And I had been participating in a lot of really fun community activities in San Diego, the startup weekend and bar camp and stuff like that. So I had a good network. And so from my very first retainer client, I started hiring freelancers. I
Mm.
was like immediately started to bring people on board and bring people on board. And that was always part of what I did, but I didn't have any financial backing and I didn't have a safety net. Like that was one of the big things. Like at the time I was married to somebody who was unemployed. And so I was the breadwinner and it was a huge leap for me to go from a reliable salary that I was having to self-medicate in order to like get through the day because the job was so toxic. And then shifting to like, I took out a loan, my 2010 Toyota Matrix secured, a small personal loan that allowed us to have a little bit of runway on make sure we'd be able to pay rent for a few months. Um, and it worked out from there. It went, it wasn't always sunshine and roses, but like I said, it
Yeah,
was at the time there was nothing I've been prouder of. So it was good.
that's awesome. And I asked because I'm getting in that position now, and I'm trying to decide, like, I don't really wanna build an agency. I don't wanna hire people, full
Yeah.
time, right? But
Yeah.
I don't wanna, like, be in the weeds doing the work all the time. I'd rather,
Yeah.
um, honestly hire people who are better at it than me and leverage my skills, which are the strategy piece, the business
Mhm.
development, working with the clients, identifying their pain, and coming up with a plan, and then saying, "Okay, here, somebody go do this thing you're better at than me to execute
Yeah.
this," right? And be able to kinda scale there and use freelancers. And did you hire anybody full-time, or did you keep it all pretty much freelancers and
Oh,
contractors?
no, as soon as I could, I put people on the payroll. In fact, I
Really?
my first it's so funny. At the time, my first, like, big retainer was, like, $4,500 a month, and I told the client in the pitch, which by the way, this organization is still my client,
Oh,
so
wow.
it went well. Um, but I told him in my pitch that if I got this work, it would allow me to hire my first full-time employee. And I knew this person had been working with me as a freelancer for months, and so we knew as soon as the organization hit that tipping point that he would come on full-time. And
Nice.
he did work for me for, like, almost 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I the things that I loved about running the agency were a lot the same things that I loved about teaching, right? Because I would, like, hire almost everybody who came into the agency, it was their first agency job. And
Mm,
so, like, getting them up to speed on whatever it was that we were doing and the energy and the flow and the opportunity of agency work, it was a lot of fun. And it turns out if you can get 30 fourth graders to do what you want, then, like, a handful of young millennials is, like, not that hard, you know?
yeah, exactly.
So I learned a lot about, management from my classroom experience. And that I mean, that is a lot of credit for that goes to the program that I got my credential from, right? That is really progressive and thoughtful and really cool. Um, but, uh but yeah, I we had including myself and someone in Portland, we had 10 full-time employees in late 2019.
Oh, wow.
Right. Right before the wheels started to come off. That was our peak. And, I mean, it's amazing when you think about it. Like, I had just signed a extension on our office lease. I was gonna
Yeah.
expand our office. We were growing, like, all these things. And then the wheels started to come off, just one thing after another. Um, and the really great thing about the way the wheels came off is that it happened in a way that allowed me to explore and come to understand that I didn't actually want that job that I had.
Mm,
Running and building that agency wasn't actually what I wanted to be doing. It was a great thing while I did it, and I'm really grateful for the experience. I learned a ton. But I was ready to transition out of that, and, um, a lot of my employees, like, had other opportunities, and so a lot of them took care of themselves. We lost 80% of our monthly recurring revenue from February till April of
oh,
2020,
wow.
right? And
Wow.
so and we did the PPP loans, we kept everybody on, and we did, a bunch of pro bono work during that time, but ultimately, the only transitioning away from going from having 10 employees to having 0 employees, I guess 9 because the 10 includes myself, so 9 to 0. Um, I laid off one person who I needed to lay off. I had one bad hire, that's on me, and the only person that I actually, like, let go of because the organization was shifting was our youngest
Mm,
and newest employee, right? Somebody that graduated from college in summer of 2020.
oh, wow.
And everybody else took care of themselves, and I don't take it for granted. It's a
Nice.
huge blessing. Like, if you had asked me September of 2019, like, "Okay, this isn't the job you want anymore," I would be like, "Well, yeah, but I'm obviously not gonna, like, fire all these people and fire
Yeah.
all these clients and like, I wasn't gonna do that." So, the way that things happened was really just an incredible gift to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Always nice when people can land on their feet and make the
Yeah,
transition easily,
yeah.
and I'm sure, like so if 2020 would never have happened, were you starting to have those thoughts before? And, or would you still be running with Diamond and Branch, or were you having those thoughts and it was kind of inevitable that you would make the pivot into something different?
That is a great question. I don't know. I don't know. I definitely would have started entertaining buyout offers. Um, the only thing I have this artifact from fall of 2019 that I use in my current curriculum, in my current practice. I was trying to move away from San Diego. San Diego's my hometown, but
Mm,
I love to visit. I don't love to live there.
mm,
And, so I was trying to relocate to Portland, and so I had this, like, 12-month plan of, like, building my client base and my employee base in the Pacific Northwest in order to justify leaving the office in San Diego in somebody else's control and moving up there and sort of starting over up there. Um, yeah, who knows what would have happened, but, one of the things that I say about being an entrepreneur is like the what I think makes an exceptional entrepreneur is someone who can, on the one hand, be passionately committed to your work. Like, you have to know that the thing that you're doing is good and important and worthy and all that kind of stuff. And also, you need to be open to shifting when your people tell you that there's an opportunity somewhere else or they need something
Mm,
else, right? There's like some balance of being responsive and being committed that is really difficult. I think it's
mhm,
really difficult. I see entrepreneurs because I most of my clients are entrepreneurs, right? So I work with like I know these people, and it's one way or another, it can really hurt you. You really have to thread that needle, and I'll say that, like, that's what I did well in the summer of 2020 is that, like, I was doing these business development calls. Nobody's signing marketing agency retainers in the summer of
mhm,
2020. Like, I was never gonna rebuild my business. But I'm having these conversations with people that are like, "I just need a plan. If you just
mm,
give me the plan, I can execute the plan."
mm,
Or, "I've got a team that's sitting on their asses right now. They can execute the plan," right? "Just tell me what to do." And I had this marketing framework that I had built in order to set the strategic direction for our agency clients. So I converted that into a consulting model, pitched it to 5 of these leads, and 3 of them closed. And that
wow,
was it. And I was like, "Okay, this is my new job. This is what I'm gonna do." And I've spent the last many years refining it, and now it's in the process of being rolled out into, like, licensed content, right? It's curriculum
mhm,
now. It's not consulting so much. Um, but it's a way of standardizing and really, like, the my pitch is that it operationalizes empathy,
mm,
right? It's like, if you think about your audiences, that my framework can help you use that empathy to actually tell you, like, what social media channels you need to be on and how you should approach your marketing and stuff like that.
mm.
So,
Interesting. Yeah, and now I'm jealous that you were a teacher and and
yeah,
got that
it helps a
training on
lot.
how to build curriculum and teach
That's
other
the
people because
thing.
that's what I love to do, but I don't have that experience of how to build that, right? And so now it's scary. I've been wanting to build a course, and we talked about this before,
Yeah,
forever, and I saw a meme about it this week that I sent to my wife, and she laughed because she knows, how long I wanted to do it, that, like, something about a year ago, I said I was gonna launch this course, and here it is, it's not launched
yeah,
because it's just failure to start. Like, it just really hard to know where to even begin, right? And
yeah,
what to teach. So yeah, that's awesome that you have that experience and can leverage that. When it comes to building frameworks, that for me also is a like a that's there's resistance there, right?
yeah,
And that's where I want to be. I'm kind of like maybe where you were several years ago with my company of, hey, I want to operationalize things. I want to build solid processes to where I can hire people. And here's how you like basically an operational manual. Like here's how you do it. Now you go
yep,
do it. Right. I
yep,
want to get to that point, productize some of the services I offer,
yeah.
um, and build frameworks. And so how did you go about building your framework? How did you put it together and build it?
Yeah. Very slowly. I had no idea that's what I was doing at the time. That's the thing, is that, like, I remember I talked about working for the content farmer. The best thing about that job was if you made an informed argument in the morning, you could literally test it and roll it out in the afternoon. Like, it was just like we were agile before agile was agile, right? Small A, but just, like, super just rolling with it. And that was amazing, and I learned so much from that experience. Then I when I went to the agencies, we had these huge clients. It was like a cruise ship. It took 5 years to
Mm,
turn, to respond to an idea or an opportunity. And I realized there was a lot of this marketing agency work was just selling the shit. Because once you had sold it, it was like, "Cool, we're gonna deliver what we delivered, you're gonna pay us for it, and I hope that works for you."
mhm,
Right? I'm just not comfortable with that kind of work. I'm just not that kind of person. And so it was essential to me. So I started thinking about it, 10 years before it became relevant.
yeah,
Um and and over my practice just got more and more. I remember in the last agency, my last day job, I had actually started the groundwork. It was like in some of my client reporting that I was doing that was like the first thing that I built that started to look a little bit like the framework that I've got now.
Mm,
But it just evolved over time. And fundamentally, my goal was to build consensus. Like, first to like identify the opportunity. Like, who are we talking to? What is the easiest way to get them to do the thing that we want them to do? Right.
mm,
And and then build consensus around that idea so that we could go to the client and say, here's what we think needs to be done. And the client would have confidence and say yes. And then we'd be able to measure it and show them either that we were right and that this is doing well and you need to keep investing. Or I have a client, like there was a client at the agency that I literally, after 6 months of doing it, I was like, we cannot make it work on this budget. Either you need to invest more money or we need to stop working together because what you've got, the level where you're at right now is not enough to move the needle
mhm,
in the ways that we know that it could. And
mhm.
he was like, "Thank you very much. I appreciate your honesty. I would have stuck it out," and I'm like, "Don't."
Yeah.
So, like, it evolved based on what I needed for my organization. It evolved based on what my clients needed. It evolved. I mean, the last step between like, it was the strategic framework that we used with our to onboard clients. But I had turned it into we called it the cause marketing boot camp. That was like a 1 day, super intense thing that was like, just for nonprofits. It was like the idea was that if you were like a one person or a two-person nonprofit, we could build your marketing plan in a day in a way that would actually use the resources that you had and not overextend, right?
Mhm,
Because all of marketing is just full of like shoulds, right?
mhm,
You feel like you should, you feel like you have to, you do all these things and there's no clear connection to your bottom line and that's dumb.
mm.
So that's, for me to come into nonprofits and give them permission to not have to do stuff if it wasn't useful. Um, that was also, I think, a big contributor was that it really was just super, super practical. And then I got passionate about being an entrepreneur and supporting other entrepreneurs and, uh, you can sort of see the thread that like the one thing we haven't really talked about is like my purpose driven,
Mm.
the fact that like I call myself a marketing activist. I don't know if there's another one out in the world, but I made that title up for myself because marketing is the thing that I do, but that's not what it's for, right? For
Mm,
me, marketing is for building stronger businesses and making underrepresented entrepreneurs and purpose-driven organizations more impactful and more powerful in the world. That's what I want. And so marketing is just the means to the end. And I don't know. I like leverage. I like elegance. I like scalability. Like I just, sort of yeah, it's funny. I've seen some to bring it back to your original question. I have seen some like the evolution of an entrepreneur, the evolution of a career sort of thing where like at some point there's a framework, right? At
mhm,
some point there is there's a product, there's a thing that has evolved out of your experience and then evolves into a consulting practice, whatever. Like I know this. Um, but I have to say I had no idea that's what I was doing when I did
mm.
it.
Yeah,
It's just building a thing that was useful for me.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, frameworks have always been an enigma to me because I know that you need to if you wanna be really successful, working for yourself, you need to build a framework that is kind
Yeah.
of unique to you and what you do and who you do it for, because otherwise you won't stand out very, very much, right? And I went through Dory Clark's Recognized Experts workshop, and I
Mm,
remember that's when frameworks kinda got on my radar,
mm,
because she talked about building them a lot, and I've just been trying to figure out how do I build what do I build a framework about? How do I do it? How do I start? And yeah, I think it's like what you said, it takes time. You can't just say, "Okay, I'm gonna build a framework tomorrow." Like,
no.
maybe you can, but it's gonna be very rough and still gonna
Yeah.
take time to shape in the
Yeah.
image
You
you
need
want
to
it, right?
it's because it's born out of your practice. So you need to refine your practice. Like, you're new out on your own. You need to like set up your systems, refine your practice, do your job well, iterate,
Mhm,
measure, and then keep going. And then it'll grow out of that. You'll figure out what it is that you figured out that other people haven't yet, you know?
mhm. Yeah, and I think that kinda leads me to the next question I have is you'd mentioned about being agile, about being able to pivot and
Mm.
change within your business of being an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, right? Um, and so in my situation, there's a lot of things I enjoy, and I think it's why I've pivoted so much throughout my career, probably to you as well to some degree that I have, diverse interests, things I enjoy, things I like to do. I've
Yeah.
had a diverse career, so there's things I've done and I can leverage. I've been in sales, I've been in recruitment, just basically sales, now marketing. I like dealing with sales and marketing. I'd like to
Yeah.
work with companies to help pull those two organizations together and help them work better together, right? Um, and so my biggest challenge since I left my full-time role to start my own company is really trying to find an identity.
Yeah.
What am I for and who am I for? Even I can do all of these things, but I shouldn't do all of these things, right?
Yeah.
Because it's only me right now. And even if
Yeah.
it wasn't just me, now it's just spreading resources too thin. And so how would you recommend like I mean, and so back to Dory Clark, she's talked a lot about in her book The Long Game, making small bets. It's like if you have an
Huh.
idea, how can you make a small bet to test it.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking a lot about that. My problem is once I get interested in something, I'm like, "Let's do this. Like, let's go all in, and now this is what I am now," right? I
Yeah.
have a hard time doing small bets and not telling people about it, right? And
Yeah.
going all in. And so, have you had to deal with that kind of like restraining yourself and then how would you recommend going about like really honing in on who I should be for, what I should be for? And I think other people probably have the same challenge when they're starting a business.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I have so many thoughts.
Mhm.
Um, well, I'll start with this. I wasn't a feminist until I started working in circumstances where I was being very successful and not rewarded for that success with either opportunity or money.
Mm,
I literally have those stories where I would create the client pitches and then my boss would take it and deliver it without me in the room.
well,
Like that is my genuine experience. It happened with a couple of different bosses. And
wow.
so that is the thing. Like all the other shit the water we swim in and all that kind of stuff. Like that was the kind of stuff that I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Oh my God, it's because I'm a chick. Like that's so shitty, right? So
Yeah.
like as soon as I figured that out for myself, that was when I started to get really passionate about busting male privilege and busting white privilege and like really trying to like open up opportunity. My fight is economic opportunity.
Mm,
And so, again, it just came from my experience. Like, it just came
yeah.
from me. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like, that's how I decided who I was for because now I've been through it. Like, now I have seen it. I learned a lot. What we didn't talk about is like when I was teaching, it was Oakland Unified. I was teaching in the lowest
Mm,
performing elementary school in the lowest performing district in the city. It was like this crazy thing. I learned a ton and it was awful, and it was wonderful, but even that wasn't enough to, like, flip me into understanding, like, really what's at stake. Um, and so I've always been somebody that is easier for me to know who I'm for, Like, I have the way that I see the world, and it I don't know. It's, like, strong. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, I'm not wishy-washy on it, and so that's just how it goes. So, I only make small bets, but I make really well-informed small bets. So, I'm an optimizer, and it's exhausting, but I can't help it. So, I am just somebody that, like, every time I touch a template, I tweak it just a little bit. every time I go through an exercise, I adjust my approach just a little bit. And until I find the thing that is like the best possible version, I can't figure out how to make it better. And then I just repeat that tool over and over again. And so I'm like one of these super crazy, um, like efficiency, like hyper, like I'm an inbox zero person. I have to-do lists for my to-do lists, right? Like I do all of these different sort of optimizations, in my personal life, in my professional life. Like I'm just like constantly tweaking and testing and tweaking and testing. And so I think that it just lucky me, right? Like that's naturally who I am, and that benefits me greatly in this role and in this, particular path. Um, the last thing that I think, um, we really don't talk about enough, and I've had some wonderful coaches that have introduced this into my experience, is understanding your zone of genius, like for real. I think that's a Gay Hendricks
Hmm. I
concept.
think
I'm
so.
not exactly sure, um, but this magical place where your skills and your passions and your personality, all the Venn diagram is matched, and you are energetic and energized and effective. Just find that. Just
Mm.
see every time you're there, notice that you're there, pay attention to what got you there, and then optimize your opportunities to spend time there. That's like bottom line. I feel like that is that's what got me to the place where I realized that, like, I could keep running this agency and we'd be fine, it'd be great, but it's not actually the best use of me. It's not actually what I wanna do, because I am way more effective when I am teaching than when I am holding team members accountable, which is really the job of being a leader.
Yeah.
Like sales and accountability, like those are your jobs.
Yeah.
Um but I'm actually much, much better at teaching and at strategy. And
Mm.
so I crafted a job where that was what I get to do.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, that sounds like the things that I'm best at too, and why I
Yeah.
have such a tough time with the execution piece of like I can get the projects, I can talk about the projects and what needs to be done, and when it comes time to execute, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go build a workflow. I don't want to do these things, right? Like
No kidding.
I
And
can.
that's the
Sometimes it can be
freedom.
fun, but
Yeah, that's why
yeah,
I'm a
I don't want to do
consultant.
that.
That's why I'm a consultant, because I'm a huge, shock, right, of everything else I've said, but like I'm a huge personality test person, right? Like I
Mm,
always want that feedback of like, if because again, it's another tool. If it's useful to
mm,
me, if it helps me make better choices, great. And so my Gallup strengths, or whatever whoever has the strengths finder now, one of my top 5 strengths is activator, right? My job is to start the process. My job is not to complete the work.
yeah,
And
exactly.
I do almost no client deliverables anymore. Like, my contract is literally like, "Consulting is advice, and you can
Mhm.
take it or not, but I am not responsible for it." Like,
Yeah,
that's it.
exactly. Yeah, and I think that's just where I need to get to,
Yeah.
with
Yeah, but you
everything.
gotta build it. You gotta have a
Right.
product, you gotta have credibility, like,
Mhm.
you gotta have a network. You can't take those things for granted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting that you talked about your strength finder because I was on your website and I looked and I saw yours on there, and
Yeah.
in mine, like when I did it, you know how they have like they'll group it by like I think maybe execution and strategy and like where your strengths kind of fit along those. Like
Yeah.
4 of my 5 are in strategy and 1 is somewhere out there somewhere else. But um, how much do you try to play to those strengths, and how important do you think it is to understand and realize what your strengths are and try to optimize? And you're an optimizer, so maybe a good
Yeah.
question for you: how to optimize toward those things?
You know, I it's so funny because I say this about, like, horoscope too. Like, I'm not a super woo-woo person. Um, I don't really believe it, except for when it's true, right? Like, that's like, because lots of times it is true, and I think when I wish God, if I had my life to live over again, I would have taken that StrengthsFinder test when I was in my 20s,
Mm,
because it was so validating to me as a woman to get all of these strengths that are, like, not considered feminine qualities at
Mhm.
all, right? To for those things to show up in my strengths and to realize that I've been fighting against things in order to, like, fit into a box or into a description, like, it was really huge for me. Not all personality tests are like that, and not all like, I don't know if that one actually, in the big scheme of things, it deserves more credibility than another one, but
Mm,
at the time that it came to me in my life, that was my experience, and so, it's just like everything else. Just like
mm,
everything else, if it's useful, use it. If it's
mm,
not, don't. Like, when the pandemic started, I, that was the first time in my life I started a meditation and journaling practice. Um, I also started a cocktail mixing hobby, like, like, my general philosophy through the pandemic was, "If it can't hurt, it might help."
mm. Nice.
And I just have always an open mind to everything, to, like, if it can't hurt, it might help, and so let's try it. Like, that's I really hope that in relationships, in work, in anything else, that's sort of my guiding principle.
Mm, nice. And yeah, I want to talk about meditation for a second. But also, notice on your website you said you're a Leo. I'm a Leo as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
the fun things that go with that, right? Um,
Listen, I am loud and I am lazy, and I know I am there's so many things like a lion that I am like, that fits me and I'm down.
exactly. Yeah. Same here. Same here. Um, so meditation. You're the third person in like the last week who has brought up
Oh,
meditation. I mean, I
oh,
hear
yeah.
people talk about it a lot, right?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I see the benefit. I
Mhm,
know there's benefit,
mhm,
but I have such a hard time sitting down, like just freeing the time to do it. Like I feel
yeah,
like I need to fill this time, and I just would have a hard time doing that.
yeah.
But I mean, I can tell you one time. I don't know if it was meditation or not. I was in high school, and
Mm,
I remember we talked about football before we hopped on. And I think we're probably in a similar age. So back when Desmond Howard won the Heisman Trophy at Michigan, I was a huge
mhm,
Michigan fan. I grew up in Indiana, but I was a Michigan fan. And I remember reading an article in Sports Illustrated about how he talked about meditating. And he said, here's how I kind of do it. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll do it before this basketball game. And I
mm,
did it. And I had one of the best games of my life. Like it was
cool,
crazy. Like I just
cool.
envisioned all of these things playing out while I
Yeah,
sat there for 10 minutes,
yeah,
and I'm in the game, and these situations kinda showed themselves, and I was already prepared for how I was gonna handle it, right? So I have done it once, in, like, 1992, 91, so it's been a while, but, yeah, like, tell me about how that's what impacts you found from that?
yeah. I think, it's funny. So for me, meditation is not so much the visioning, not so much like the projecting, which sounds like what you experienced. Um, it's just turning off the noise.
Mhm,
There's just a lot of noise in my head, and um it takes a great deal of practice for me, a great deal of discipline to really be able to turn it down. And what happens when I can turn it down is it just, like, honestly, I look at, like, 10 minutes a day. Like, I'm like, I got very, very
mhm,
right, honestly, I use the Calm app. I love it. It's got a little daily 10-minute meditation, and it's just enough for me that I like 10 minutes of meditation, 10 minutes followed by 10 minutes of journaling, totally open journaling.
mm,
And that is enough for me to, like, clear out the garbage. Just move on from the things that are still sort of, you know, poking at the back of my brain. And it just helps calm. I mean, I it's funny because I also very much, even though I haven't lived there in a year and didn't live there very long, I very much associate meditation with the desert. Like, I'm a desert person. I got a place in Palm Springs. I, like, will retire there someday. And so now even when, I live in the city now. I live in LA. And even here, when I meditate, I close my eyes and I envision the desert. Like, that's what's in my head when I am thinking about nothing. Um, and I think it's easy to try it and feel like you're not good at it.
Mhm.
And it's just like everything else. You just gotta learn how. You gotta
Mm,
practice. You gotta try. Like the I'm a huge fan of Atomic Habits,
mm.
right? You're not gonna be surprised if anybody knows that book. That's like you know, um, there's just a lot of ways to start new practices, even if you're not sure, not ready, not open to it. But yeah, it's just it can't hurt. It might help,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly. Yeah, and I know we're coming up on time. One quick follow-up to that is there the right time of day, or does it matter, like, when you kinda plug it into your day?
Mm. Do you know a lot of different people have a lot of different views on this. Um, I feel the most benefit when I meditate first thing in the morning. And I'm like, first thing, like bathroom, coffee, meditate. Like literally, like my teeth aren't even brushed when I sit in the morning. Um, I find late in the day, I like often there'll be like a moment in the day where I'm just like, oh my God, I need a break. And I will like take 5 minutes and sort of refocus myself. Um, I don't get a ton of benefit from late in the day meditation because it just becomes too much like reflection and rumination, and I
Mm,
can't really get things to shut up so much. I can't really get the space that I need. Um, the other thing that I'll say is like the meditation and some kind of flow state feel very connected to me in my brain and my body. So like a good yoga class is a meditation for me. A really interesting knitting project is a meditation for me. Anything that quiets all the
mm.
voices and stops all the poking. Um, it can happen lots of different times and places.
Yeah. Interesting.
Mm.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, so much to talk about. We may need a part 2. But I wanted to talk to you
Yeah,
more about
I
the
love it.
teaching part and,
Yeah,
yeah, a lot more to talk about in that thread that you talked about, the common thread. So I might have to
yeah.
have a part 2 and, dig into those things more. But, yeah, really appreciate you coming on today. And, how can people find you if they wanna connect with you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is the only social media that I'm really excited about and participate in. So you can like Google me and find Lindsay LaShell on LinkedIn. I'm the only one. And then my company website is open-lines.co. And there you can see some of my online courses, get a feel for some of my curriculum and consulting projects. Yeah, that's it. That's me.
Nice, nice. I wish I were the only one with my name, but apparently someone decided to
I
change their
know.
name to mine,
I know.
and, that messed everything up.
There is another Lindsay LaShell in the country, but I haven't heard or seen anything from her since she graduated college. She played tennis in Colorado,
Oh,
but
really?
since she
Interesting.
graduated college, I haven't seen anything from her. So I
Mm,
basically own the name,
nice.
for a very long time on the
That's
internet.
awesome.
Yeah. I mean, also I've been working on the internet for, 20 years, so that makes it
Yeah,
easy too.
exactly.
Yep.
Nice.
Mm,
Cool. Well, yeah, thanks a lot for coming on, and,
absolutely.
yeah, we may have to do it again sometime.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for having me. I love it.